Hi, this is Roman Polanski. I got your message.
You think if some cocksucker comes up to me and wants my fucking wallet, I'm not going to blow his fucking brains out?
Hello, this is Ferlinghetti. You could throw off the record.
You know, it's very likely I'm the only person on the planet who's spoken one-on-one with every one of the following four icons: Kate Bush, Roman Polanski, Fela Kuti, and Richard Pryor. Of course, I've interviewed lots of other luminaries over the decades as a journalist, and I didn't exactly grow up with any connections to celebrities. I've just had a knack for getting, kind of rare interviews here. And now that I'm getting older, I've decided to spill some secrets. Welcome to my personal audio archive, my private stash of recordings and tapes of various icons and stars that I've made over the years. And what's really amazing too is that that I preserved these recordings at all. I mean, all of them almost got lost 20-some years ago when I was almost murdered by people breaking down my door. More on that later. Such a diversity here in my private archive. So where do I begin? Roman Polanski, December 27th, 28th, 1998. I think most film people will agree that Polanski is one of the all-time geniuses of cinema. And he's certainly one of the smartest guys I've ever spoken with in my life, right up there with Dick Gregory, Woody Allen, Frank Zappa. Anyway, how did I manage to land a rare interview with Polanski in the first place? Okay, here's how it happened. Let's just say he's not exactly easy to reach, given that he's been a fugitive from justice in the U.S. since 1978. Anyway, I first cold called Paul Sylbert, an art director in the movies, and he immediately directed me to his brother, Richard Sylbert, who was the production designer of the movie Chinatown, and we got to talking, and he was evidently so impressed with how much I knew about the movie that at the end of the conversation he said, "You want Roman's number?" Here's the moment when that happened. Polanski was extremely frank and uncensored in his remarks. He even touched on the subject of the Manson gang's murder of his wife and friends. And you could hear his voice just sort of, drop a notch, as he remembered that awful time.
Experience in, you had a personal tragedy there in Pryor, 2 years before the movie. And you almost had to become like a kind of, detective in it, for a time there, and do you think that kind of informed your movie? I mean, did it?
Well, I can tell you that every experience helps you with your work and being Richard. I don't know how to answer this question.
No, that's fast. And,
and I touched on the big scandal, and whether he was considering coming to the U.S. to resolve his legal problems.
Last year in the newspapers, it was reported that, you might be settling the legal problems and stuff and everything.
Yeah, but how can I with the actual state of the media? I don't want to become a product, you see. I have family to look after. I don't want to be in every fucking tabloid,
Here's a real rarity. A one-on-one, in-person interview with Kate Bush, who is notorious for not giving interviews to anyone anywhere, but she did grant me a sit-down back in November 1985, back when I was a writer-reporter for Cashbox magazine. We met and New York City. She had just finished, her all-time masterwork, Hounds of Love, which we talked about in depth. So what can I say about her? She was, enchanting, like a walk through a haunted forest or something, She smoked cigarettes. She had a boyfriend, Del Palmer, who, and when she talked with him, her voice seemed to go up like about an octave or so. She was clearly in love with the guy. What else? She was clearly into movies and stuff. She wanted to talk about films more than music, it seemed, as you can hear here.
Actually, but I like films. I'm almost fanatical about films.
What are your favorites?
Well, Don't Look Now. Again, we haven't done a Southern collection. I think that's one of the best films ever made. I think Mickey's Road is superb.
And she was good humored. We here we are joking around together. In the hotel room.
Cigarettes can cause loss of memory. Does that sound something?
Well, maybe it was one of those questions you weren't meant to ask. Maybe it's just
One of those, yeah.
Let's see what else I have here in my archive. I have, let's see, I have a 1986 interview with Ted Nugent, in which he sounds like a clinical paranoid, in my opinion. Uh-oh, a snake.
You think if some cocksucker comes up to me and wants my fucking wallet, I'm not gonna blow his fucking brains out? What we have to do is start killing the cocksuckers. Kill a bunch of them. Kill them every time they confront somebody. Put out a special squad of death wishers. Blow these cocksuckers away and let the word get out there on the street. Don't fuck with this society. Don't fuck with the hard-working, law-abiding man. Because he's not turning the other cheek anymore. He's going to waste your ass. Go get a fucking job.
Unfortunately, part of my Nugent interview is off the record, so I can't reveal that. But let me say that when I can say with certainty that when he was with Atlantic Records executives, he was packing some serious firepower. Anne Heche, April 5th, 1997, Beverly Hills. This was the interview that I conducted that originated one of the biggest celebrity stories of 1997. 5 p.m. on April 5th. I was on the sidewalk of the Four Seasons front driveway in Beverly Hills, waiting for a bus. I was waiting right about there. Ellen DeGeneres would drive up right around there. But anyway, I was waiting for a bus to take me to an advanced screening in Westwood of Volcano, co-starring an almost completely unknown actress named, you guessed it, Anne Heche, who I was scheduled to interview the next day. My editor at the San Francisco Chronicle wanted me to do a story on Heche, only because, she was in an upcoming film called Volcano. Nobody at the Chronicle had any idea that Heche was in a relationship with Ellen DeGeneres, and that this would turn into a blockbuster story. As you can see here, these are my notes of when I talked with my editor. She wanted something on Volcano. That was going to be the center of it. And anyone who says otherwise is being inaccurate. Anyway, as I stood waiting for the bus, a white Porsche Carrera drove into the semicircular driveway here, right about where I'm pointing, as I was right over here, and she outstepped none other than Ellen DeGeneres, waving to a woman in sunglasses who turned out to be Heche, who she was like walking from there to DeGeneres. I was over there, and I took everything down in my notepad. They hugged, they kissed. I put that in my notes here, as you can see. The thing about Heche in the year 1997, if you saw her in person, you could see she had, you know, the fairest, most unblemished facial skin you can imagine. So when I asked her about Ellen DeGeneres, and she blushed and turned completely red, I could see I was on to something.
Okay, great. What do you think about the upcoming, the national passion?
Oh, I think it's incredibly brave. I mean, I admire anybody who's willing to take a stand for what they believe in. I mean, Ellen is so grounded in who she is, and she's fought very hard to get to her own love and respect.
Yeah. And here's another extreme rarity, okay? The very last recorded interview with the great Richard Pryor that has been made public. And you could see how far his multiple sclerosis had advanced. It was just sad.
Hi, Richard. You know, but for example, the acid trip that you did in the 70s and everything, you know, how did that evolve, you know? Did that come from a real, you know, acid trip? And how did it evolve? You know, maybe you can, you know, was that something you worked out at the Comedy Store? Yes.
I also talked with colleagues and friends and relatives of Pryor's, and you know, they all had you know, secrets to spill about the man, and you know, not least of all his biological son, Richard Pryor Jr., who accused of his father of child molestation, a very serious charge. And here is Richard Jr. Saying as much.
You know, I mentioned, you know, whether your dad ever did anything, you know, sexual, you know, to you. And you said, well, there was a weird incident, and then you stopped because there were people through. What, now that you're alone, what was it? What happened? Touching thing. I remember we were taking a nap or something. How old were you? Did you do anything with, you know, with his mouth or anything, you know, or was it just hands touching? No, it was just hands.
Of course, the man who invented much of what Richard Pryor did on stage was comedian Dick Gregory, who I interviewed on September 8, 2005. Now, before we go any further, let me just say that I don't personally use the N-word, okay? I just don't. But Dick Gregory did, copiously. He even advocated the use of the slur. He used it like a record 15 times in a half hour when I spoke with him. And he had reasonable reasons for using it, as you can hear here.
Your autobiography, for example, he renounced it.
Yeah, well,
He renounced it after going to Kenya. He went to
and I said, and my reaction was, what? Keep using the word nigger, but stop calling my sister a bitch. Okay? Because it's impossible for a black person to be a nigger.
Yeah, Dick Gregory was not the only person who used the N-word in my presence. Carroll O'Connor, television's Archie Bunker, also used it when he was trying to make a point about blue collar racism. Here he is in August 1997, like an hour before Princess Di had her died in a car accident, incidentally.
You believed his father, who had these things to say about Jews and niggers.
Joey Ramone, October 1985. I actually hung out with him a good deal in the 1980s. He had a brilliant sense of radically understated humor that truly trusted the listener to get the joke. Funny guy in his way. Anyway, this was my first interview with him, and I asked whether his band, the Ramones, who at that point were about 10 years down the line, had become a dinosaur band.
10 years on, do you see yourself maybe becoming like, kind of a dinosaur band?
No, we're still fresher and better, and we're still leading the way,
Right.
I mean, we haven't, you can only become a dinosaur after, you're like, we haven't really made, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, we made it, and we've changed the course of history, I mean, we revolutionized rock and roll in 1976. Things were sort of, when there really wasn't any more rock and roll,
And then there's Ray Davies of the Kinks, who I consider to be one of the best songwriters of the past, 100 years, pretty much. I sat down with him December 1986 on West 72nd Street in Manhattan. And, the main thing about Ray Davies is that he's genuinely funny. He's probably more spontaneously funny than anyone I've interviewed, except maybe Dick Cavett. He's written a lot of great songs, but I wanted him to talk about the ones that he was least proud of. What album was he? Did he wish he had not recorded? And here, long pause, and here was his response.
Is there one particular album that you wish you just hadn't recorded?
Yeah, there are a couple, but on them are really good. There's a few really good songs. I'm sure there is. Yeah, Preservation.
Act 2?
Yeah, the double album.
The double one? Yeah.
Not because I don't like it, because I'd like to have to do it now.
Robert Goulet, July 14th, 1999. He came across as both a Vegas tough and an incurable romantic, the sort of guy who genuinely, believed the pop music lyrics he'd been singing. And on the eve of my own 42nd birthday, he actually sang "This Nearly Was Mine" to me over the phone. What are the odds of that, huh? Yeah, and then there are interviews that I conducted that are notable because they're either the first or the last interviews that were done by a particular icon, like Trey Anastasio. I talked with him in January 1989, which makes this the very first recorded interview ever done with him that's in existence today. And In fact, I can actually show the moment when the jam band movement of the 90s was sort of invented. I actually recorded the moment when Trey first learned about the existence of a band called Widespread Panic, with which he would spearhead the whole movement. Here's the moment of birth, I suppose you could say. Me making Trey aware of the existence of Widespread Panic.
Really? We get people in touch. You familiar with a band called Widespread Panic? No, I haven't. They're a band from Athens, Georgia, and they follow somewhat similar to what you're describing, and they really go very far with the long-form jams and attract a lot of deadhead people.
Yeah, I'm sure today that Trey would say, Paul who? Because I haven't been in contact with him for decades, but that still doesn't alter the fact, it doesn't erase the fact that, it's on recording, this is where he first heard of the band. Abbie Hoffman, October 1987, about a year and a half before his death. He was one of the very few people who, after I interviewed him, I said, he's doomed. At the end of the interview, he just picked up a box, styrofoam going all over the place. He starts muttering like some crazy guy, walked off without even saying goodbye, and it wasn't an adversarial interview. He committed suicide, as we all know, around a year and a half later.
The public knew the width of these tests and how they were used as a mass surveillance device. They'd be up in arms.
Right.
Sometimes the people that hate the government, they're never there when you need them. They're coming in your bladder.
Okay. Well, you got to go, I guess, Oh, God, they're all over the place.
What are you doing? Women ought to run the business center.
Heath Ledger, Beverly Hills, June 3rd, 2000, at the dawn of his superstardom, if you will. Ledger was one of those who, after I interviewed him, I thought, he's doomed. And sure enough, he was. He was also uptight and defensive and clearly overworked at the time, and talking ultra fast in the manner of someone on speed. Here's a clip.
People, I personally don't see any problem with that because it's wartime and it's justified perfectly. Yeah. But what's your view on that? And because people are going to say, this is teaching kids to kill like this, or savagery in front of,
Well, then they're all fucking idiots because they let their kids watch fucking TV. They let their kids play computer games and rip heads off people. They're hypocrites. They're living amongst it. It's ridiculous. It's like if they're going to complain about that, let them. Fuck them. Because really, the world's so full of fucking shit and chaos right now. It's not funny. You put on the TV. I don't watch TV. I haven't watched TV for fucking years. I don't have one. I have one only for movies. I have a DVD and a video player. I don't hook it up to fucking cable, nothing. It's trash. And if they think that's trash, well, fuck. There's something wrong. The computer games and all that shit, that's ridiculous. They don't have to worry about this. They got to worry about that shit, that electronic nanny that they sit their kids down in front of so they don't have to worry about their kids. They don't have to create shit for them to do and let them use their imagination and go, hey, go outside and run around in the garden. No, stick them in front of here, you don't have to worry about them. They can go fuck off and talk to their friends. Fuck them.
Right. And then there are the film auteurs that I've been lucky enough to have interviewed, some of the world's best film directors. Let me just do quick takes on 7 of them. First, Woody Allen, December 3rd, 1999, Beverly Hills. I was surprised to find out what his favorite Allen movie was.
If you were to name your 5 favorite films, which ones would they be? Do you agree with the consensus that Annie Hall and Manhattan are your 2 best films?
No. They're my 2 most middle-class successful films. And so they massage the prejudices of the middle class, and so they're popular and people like them. But, Husbands and Wives is much better than both of those films. Zellie's a better film. I prefer, Bullets Over Broadway, maybe even Manhattan Murder Mystery. Annie Hall was just, likable trifle that people liked at the time, and Manhattan as well. But they're not nearly as good as some other films that have done. From my point of view, they may be more popular, but you can't equate the popularity of a film with the quality of the film.
David Fincher, August 1997, Los Angeles. A rare interview with him.
Multiple times, and the last scene, how can you describe, that last scene where the final deadly sins take place, could you describe how that thing evolved? I mean, what that was just, that was just right off the page. It's a total. We only had Brad for 55 days, so at the end of those 3 days, he was gone. Oh God! So at first, it's amazing working with really, really fine actors. It makes your job a lot easier because they do so much for you. There's certain things you don't have to do. You don't have to tell that story. They're telling that story.
Pedro Almodovar, December 5th, 1999. He gave me a real inside glimpse into this oppression of the Francisco Franco regime when he was growing up in Spain.
You lived under Franco. You were a teenager under Francisco Franco. What was it like being a teenager in Madrid?
Well, it was nightmares because even I didn't have. I just arrived from my little village, so I was consciously against that regime. But I was not in any kind of party because I was not living. As I came from my little village, I could say that I didn't have problem with police, but the fear was there. The atmosphere of fear. It was the more clear souvenir that I have from that period. It was awful if you don't have. You have to go up with your identity card. Just if you discover in the street that you don't have it, it's really. You don't have your have the identity.
M. Night Shyamalan, July 30th, 1999. Mine is the only interview with Shyamalan about The Sixth Sense before the release of The Sixth Sense.
You were very sure of landing, Bruce Willis in terms of, I think even before you finished the script.
Right.
And you actually did. How did that happen?
I don't know. This has been a very weird film, and it's not like I just thought it was going to happen. I thought I was going to sell it for a ton of money, and I thought Bruce Willis was going to be in it, and I hadn't written a word of it yet. I just had the title, and it just felt right. And it turned out that he was the guy we went to first, and he says yes, and everything's fallen suit, and the film's opening on my birthday.
Whoa. How old will you?
I will be 29 on the day that my movie opens.
Whoa.
John Woo, May 5th, 2000, Los Angeles. He described in harrowing detail his rough and tumble upbringing in Hong Kong.
Nick, you at an early age. What kind of things did you see, when you were 6, 7 years old in Hong Kong, during those pretty bad years that have been described? Did you see people get shot and violence and terror and stuff? And how did that evolve into this vision that you've got that is almost like a Broadway musical? In a lot of words.
We were living in so many bad neighborhoods, with drug dealers and prostitutes and gamblers, every bad things, all around. And then and by the meantime, I got to deal with the gang,
Would they, would they, beat you up or something?
Yeah, I almost got that beat up every day. So every day, first thing in the morning, the first thing, I got to grab something, like a
stick or something,
a stick or something, or a iron bar, or a brick, and use it as a weapon.
Luc Besson, April 1997. He talked about some of his main influences.
Some of your favorites growing up?
But until I was living in Greece and Yugoslavia until 9 years old.
Okay.
So I've never watched a movie until then. And then I was living in my mom was, just a little money, so we have no TV. And I think I started to really go for movies at 15 years old.
What did you watch then?
What was out?
Barry Sonnenfeld, June 20th, 1999. Very humorous guy. And he told me about how his mom paged him publicly at a rock concert when he was a teenager.
I was paged at Madison Square Garden by my mother during a rock concert at 2 in the morning with the announcer saying, "Barry Sonnenfeld, call your mother." My mother did say if I went away to sleepaway school, what most people on the planet call college, she would commit suicide.
And then there's Alan Bean, the fourth human being to have walked on the moon, and spoke with him October 13th, 1998, and he talks so vividly about, the everyday realities of walking on the moon.
Stepped out, onto the moon. What do you see? What do you see out there? What was the first thing from, to have an artist describe it? What is it that you see when you take that first step?
Well, first of all, you back out of the door. So you sort of back into this new environment. You're inside the lunar module. It looks bright outside, but you're fairly dim inside, even though the windows are up. So you back out carefully, and you close the hatch, and then you come down the ladder. And then when you turn around, there's this incredible brightness around you. It's like coming out of the house at night onto a patio that's brightly lit. I mean, it's super brightly lit. And maybe coming out of the dark of a stadium into the area where it's completely illuminated so brightly. And so you're looking around and you're saying, "My God, look at this. This looks so different than when I was inside. It looks more scary." I mean, inside you're looking out these little windows thinking, "There's the moon out there." But when you get out there, you're saying, "My God, look at this place. It's not like any place on earth." And boy, I hope my suit doesn't leak, because if it does, I'm dead.
Fela Kuti, June 17th, 1986. About 7 weeks after his release from Maiduguri prison. I have to say that Fela was easily the bravest person I've ever interviewed. I mean, I talked with him about, the government in Nigeria, and, whether he was going to continue to speak out against the autocracy that had put him in prison to begin with. And he didn't mince any words.
Are you still going to speak out against, the government, the Nigerian government, the military? Do you still intend to, you're not going to back down? Consider getting involved in Nigerian politics and actually perhaps and you mentioned at the press conference that some of the military people actually have your records. They like your records.
Lawrence Ferlinghetti, August 29, 2000. I spoke with him in depth, one-on-one, in North Beach, and, we mostly talked in depth about How, Allen Ginsberg's poem, though we also, addressed other subjects about the beats. He took great pains, for example, to, spill some secrets here and there.
And Carroll, what
kind of guy was he, by the way? I mean, you know, in terms of to meet him for the first time, you know, was the
Ellen was always trying to make him say he was gay, but I thought that was really absurd. He was one of the biggest women chasers I ever met.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
He was built like a French Canuck lumberjack.
He played football in Lowell or wherever.
Yeah.
He's another star.
I didn't get to know him very well. I ended up knowing Alan much better than him.
As I mentioned earlier, I almost lost all this stuff on January 10th, 2002, when a couple people tried to break down my front and only door with a hammer while yelling death threats. As you can see here, these are actual pictures from that night. Yeah. And so, after all these decades, I can spill these secrets and tell the truth about some icons and about myself